Okay, I think we can proceed to the lecture. Hello everyone, my name is Victoria and today we are going to discuss accessibility. So, as Tim Berners-Lee said once, the power of the web is in its universality. Access by everyone, regardless of disability, is an essential aspect. And this is like basic explanation and basic paradigm of the accessibility in the web. So our web applications or websites should be accessible by everyone, regardless their problems in life, their disabilities, and all that. So yeah, accessibility is a process of making your website usable, accessible by anyone. And when we talk about accessibility, we usually think about someone with permanent disabilities, like some muted people or blind people, possibly. But accessibility is not only about people like that. We can say that we need to make our site accessible for people with temporary disabilities. For example, if some person broke the arm, for example, or has problem with the eyes temporary, they still want to use our website. They still need to have this possibility, and we need to provide them with it. Moreover, we're talking about when we talk about accessibility, we talk about healthy people as well. For example, imagine a situation where you're in the park in a really sunny day, you're looking in the screen of your phone and wanna, for example, I don't know, order some food or order a taxi, but you can't see anything because of the problems with contrast on the site. For example, because you have like this sunny day, the sun shines right in the screen of your mobile phone, and you just can't use the site. This is also about accessibility. Or imagine that you broke your mouse and you don't have a touchpad. You have like regular PC. You need to be able to use some resources regardless without any mouse, using just your keyboard. And I sure you know that Windows or iOS system, not talking about the browser, you can use with your keyboard, but websites are provided by different people than Windows or Apple, so they also should um, stick to some rules, should be accessible and usable for everyone as well. So here on the screen you can see the chart, how we shortly call accessibility. You may come across this sort of thing when you will read something about it, so just for you to know. Let's talk about disabilities first, and what kind of disabilities people might have and we should take into consideration. Mostly there are like visual, auditory, speech, motor or physical, cognitive, and seizure disorders. Most of the time you will came across two first problems, mostly the first one, because only if you work with some specific website, for example, like YouTube, you would need to face with the problem of making your website accessible for people with auditory disorders, to make captions, for example, for your media files and more. So visual, for example, we're talking about people who have problems with sight, or they, for example, don't recognize colors, or probably some people with dyslexia. It's you can literally see in the screen how people with dyslexia see some text. and it might be a really serious problem. That's why people with this need some readers, programs that would read for them. And yeah, we also face with people who are blind completely. Here's a really nice video. This this video presents how you can make your media accessible for person who can't see. Um, let's try to watch first minute, I guess, or even a half of a minute, so you had kind of view of this, and tell me if you won't hear anything. Please write in the chat if you hear something, because I'm not sure about it. No, okay, never mind. You can watch this video later. I will provide a link on for this video, but mainly what's happening is just woman on the background telling what's happening on the screen. So even if you can't see or have a problem, you will get some overview of what this video about and what was presented. So she said like words appear on the screen. She read this text. She described that here is some university. We see the statue of the dog. We see a small little puppy going through the doors, and there are a lot of different puppies. So something like that. It's alternative for people who have problems with some with their eyes, so they can't see, but this probably will help them just to get some information. Here also video without description if you would like to watch it. Okay. The next one is auditory disorders. Here we talk about people who can't hear, and here you came across some transcription. Mostly you came across subtitles, but YouTube actually have transcript. So minute by minute text that was provided in the video, so you can read it without actually hearing something and everything. So it might be useful even for you. For example, if you don't want to watch video or you would like only to read some context. Usually when we came across this, when we talk about some educational videos or some courses, maybe for someone it would be handy to write some conspect or something like that. So this is how we solve some accessibility problems with people with auditory disorders. When we came across cognitive disorders, this is where things become a bit complicated, because cognitive disorders, it's something about how a person thinks. So it can affect some attention problems with attention or memory, some speed of processing information, and more. So this is where we should design our site in a certain way if we want to cover people with these problems. Okay, and also the separate part of people with disorders is older users. We have like a lot of people now who are using the web who are older than 60 years. So we should take into consideration that these people who in like 60% of the cases would have some disorders, speech, mostly auditory or sight, but something. And it's quite a big part of the users we can see. So it's almost 1 of 7 spot. And all these old people would have a variety of disorders related to their age, like reduced contrast sensitivity or some fine motor control problems if they have some tumor, or, for example, difficulties to hear some audio or podcasts, and also some cognitive problems. So with three first groups, we can solve the accessibility problems in these groups only by some web tools. Like we'll talk about them later, but it's mostly like some HTML attribute or some specially written JavaScript. But when we talk about cognitive disorders, here we need to really think about it when we create, design some features on our site, or even the full site completely. Because, for example, we should always think that person who has cognitive disorders should stay attentive during their while they're surfing our site. So we need to make him attentive. We shouldn't add some, for example, pop-ups that will drag his attention from the main information, or add some, these annoying ads on our site. So there's some design technique that could help us with in this situation, but it's really, really hard, and it's mostly not the job of the junior or even middle developer, so mostly someone higher, but it's something that we need to know and understand. Cool. So how people regulate this sort of thing? So we have people with disorders, we categorize them, we know what kind of problems these people might have, but is it regulated somehow, where we can search for some solutions, where we can find the rules that we should use creating our website, because it is kind of tricky thing to do, and it's actually this a thing that regulates accessibility, and it's called Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and it's for people who create, for us, for developers, for testers, for people who create some accessibility tools, and mostly for everyone who want to make their site accessible. So WCAG is a document. It's a document with some statements that we should take into account when we create our website. So it organized in some layers. So it has 4 main principles. Each of these principles have its own guidelines, and it is 13 guidelines overall. And a separate part of each guideline is its success criteria. We have 3 levels of success criteria, and we have some sufficient and advisory techniques. So here is a small link to the site with the checklist. If you're interested, you can just go there and look, and you can, I don't know, print it for yourself maybe, or just use it in the regular basis when you'll become a full not to say like developer, but when you start working and you came across accessibility, this document would really help. So not this. Okay, so the first principle tell us that perceivable web content is made available to the senses, sight, hearing, and/or touch. So everything in our page should be visible. Not everything, but like some really important information should be visible or hearable or probably touchable if we talk about some mobile devices. Here is four guidelines, like text alternative, for example, we need to provide some text alternatives for any non-text content, for example, for images. You already came across that. I'm sure that we have alt attribute in the image, so it's basically like alternative text. Same for other components. For example, if we create some custom component, maybe custom, I don't know, form component, like, I don't know, check, oh my gosh, radio button or checkbox or just a button that not actually a button. We don't use their tag button. We use, for example, div just for sake of our design. And this is where we need to provide non-text content because it's our custom component. For example, for time-based media, we need to provide alternative too. Our content on our website should be adaptable. So you also came across like adaptive layout and responsive layout. So this is where adaptivity came from, basically, and we should create content that can be presented in different way. For example, not only for desktop but for mobile. For example, some person don't have laptop or like PC, but it has mobile device. Our website should be accessible for person without this particular PC device or anything, using just mobile phone. And distinguishable, make it easier for users to see and hear content, including separating foreground from background. The second principle tells us that operable interface forms, controls, and navigation are operable. So kind of we used operable 2 times, but it just highlights and emphasizes that we need to make sure that everything that is form or some navigation, probably link button, that everything that we can interact with should be accessible without any mouse, for example, just from your keyboard. So yeah, and this is the first guideline. Keyboard accessible, make all functionality available from a keyboard. And the second guideline tells us that we need to provide users enough time to read and use content. This is where, for example, this guideline can help us with multimedia data, for example, with video. If we provide user with subtitles, we should make sure that provided subtitles can be read in a certain time. Seizures. We shouldn't design content in a way that is known to cause seizures or physical reactions. So people with epileptic seizures, for example, should be protected here. For example, we shouldn't use some animations that could be disturbing for them and everything like that. Navigatable. Provide ways to help users navigate, find content, and determine where they are. This is a thing that actually works with combination with the first guideline. So when we navigate using keyboard, we always need to know where we navigated from and where we navigated to, where we are now on the page. So if I navigated with keyboard to some button, I need to know that it is button, not radio button, not checkbox, not some link that it is a button and I need to understand what this button do. And the fifth guideline, input modalities, make it easier for users to operate functionality through various input beyond keyboard. It's hard for me to imagine what else except keyboard we're talking about. Probably when we use mobile phone, probably we don't use like non-keyboard or mouse, or we use just touches. Maybe sometimes people with visual disorder have special keyboards and pads that help them read with braille. So probably this is what we talk about here as well. So we need to make it accessible for them too. So the third principle, understandable information and the operation of user interface must be understandable. Also, we use understandable here 2 times, and this is also an emphasis. So the first guideline is readable, make text content readable and understandable. It is mostly about content itself, not how it looks, not where it appears on the page. It's mostly a point to some people who create text for your website. Predictable, make web pages appear and operate in predictable ways. So there are some not techniques, but there are certain pre-created ways how certain elements on the page should behave. For example, if we talk about some forms like radio button, navigating on them using keyboard, like using my arrows up and down, when I navigate on them, I actually select them. So if I navigate it to like radio group and I click bottom arrow, I will select the first element from this radio group. So I will be on the first radio button. And then when I click the second time on my down arrow on my keyboard, I will navigate to the second radio, but also I will select it. This is special behavior for radio buttons, and this is what users that use keyboard to navigate on your page or some excessive tools like screen readers would expect from your website. If you use, for example, checkboxes, this is not how it will behave. To select some checkbox, I need to press to space or to enter sometimes. All these techniques described on the battery W3C website in the WCAG part of this website. So there are a lot of examples of components. You can look at them, you can understand how they behave and etc. So W3C, VCAG, AG. Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and for example, here is like checkbox also as well. But for example, if you need to, let's write examples. Yeah, here. So yeah, here you can see examples. And we came across some examples of buttons. So here we can see how it should behave. We can listen how it should be written, not written on the screen reading and everything. So this is like a standard. Here you can look how it should be implemented as well. So you can go to inspect mode and see. You also can read about it, some information like how should they behave, what they should do, for example, about navigation menu button or some call for action buttons, what we should implement for them and more. So let's go back to our presentation. Yeah, and the last one of the guidelines from this principle is input assistant, help users avoid and correct mistakes. Here, for example, when you, this point tells us that we need using some JavaScript sometimes help person to avoid some mistake as we told, but not only like tell them that not to tell them what they should write, but sometimes tell they, oh, there is a mistake in your like sentence here, how you should correct it. Or for example, if we need to have, for example, email address in some form input, we should directly tell the person that, hey, I expect that you will write here an email in a certain form, for example, this one, and this is how you will succeed in this guideline. The last and first principle tells us this robust content can be used reliably by a wide variety of users agents, including assistive technologies. So we have here only one guideline that tells us that we should maximize compatibility with current and future user agents, including accessible technologies. So projects usually have a list of browsers and their version that they support. Like Chrome of the last two versions, Safari of the last two versions, I don't know, Internet Explorer, Explorer 11, maybe Edge, something like that. So in an ideal world, we should support every browser, but this will take a lot of effort from developers and from testers, from teams in general. So this is not how this works. So we maximize according to our compatibilities. Yep, and as I told you before, we have some levels of conformance for each and every guideline. So the first level tells us that it can block some people with disabilities, but it's relatively easy for developers to implement. For example, all images from form image button or image map hotspot have appropriate equivalent alternative text. So every image would have alternative text. It's easy. It's like 2 seconds to add. Or the reading and navigation order is logical and intuitive, so it's guideline adaptable. And here when we talk about, for example, order of our headings, you might already heard that we should have like one H1 header on the page, and then we should have like H2, then H3, H4, and only in this order, never we break this order. This is actually why, because some accessible technologies use this order to create sort of tree of the navigation, because we can write in some screen readers or assistive technologies, we can select like readme page using links, or readme page or help me navigate through page using headers or buttons or some other focusable elements. So be cautious here. And the last example, color is not used as the sole method of conveying content or distinguishing visual elements. The second level is also might cause some difficulty for people with disabilities, but it's more difficult for developers to implement. Usually, projects take this level of conformance for their standards because it's like we already covered most of the people with disabilities and we helped most of the people, but it's still not ridiculously hard to make. So we kind of balance effort and result of it. So the examples are like synchronized captions are provided for all live multimedia, or orientation of web content isn't restricted to only portrait or landscape unless a specific orientation is required, but we rarely came across it. Or for example, no loss of content or functionality occurs and horizontal scrolling is avoided when content is presented at a width. So none of the content is hidden from the viewport of our device. And last but not least, the third level on conformance 3A, it improves accessibility and reduces fatigue for some people with disabilities, but is usually and most of the time, it's extremely hard to implement. And mostly it's such functionality that's hard to notice, and we cover with this level such a small part of people. So mostly only government sites or some official websites cover their platform with level 3 accessibility. Simple shops or some social networks usually use A2 level. So the examples of this level of conformance is that content doesn't restrict input to a specific modality such as touch only or keyboard only, but must support alternative inputs. Area is used. We'll talk about what is area a bit later, some specific attributes for HTML. So this attribute is used where appropriate to enhance HTML semantics to better identify the purpose of interface components. And text is used within an image only for decoration or when the information cannot be presented with the text alone. So we don't present any information with image only. So maybe some questions so far. Okay, so sorry for like this kind of boring topic, but this is what accessibility actually is. It's about some rules, it's about some guidelines, and about knowing how to implement it. So it might be boring, but it's really, really important. And why is it important? Not counting that, not implementing accessibility, we might block some users to use our platform and cut down our incomes, for example, if we talk about some shops. But not counting that, we might have problems with laws. And this image shows you how many countries now, not now, I guess 2 years ago, adopted VCAG version 2, and they cover this by law. Not really a lot of, but as you might know, like Canada or United States, most of the Europe, like Europe, cover this, and mostly we work for companies that originated from USA, not mostly, but you might came across some project that originated from here and from there, and there you would need to cover this accessibilities. Therefore, some companies might be originated in other countries, like for example, EPAM was originated in Belarus, but now most of the and biggest part of it in the United States. So if, for example, one day we would create website for EPAM, we would need to cover the VCAG.2, the third version. And yeah, here I provided for you some links. We won't go through them now, but this is the actual laws that cover accessibilities, and this is what can appear in SUE for your website if you will register it in some countries from this list. And yeah, this is what you need to know. So this is some serious thing. And if you work like outsourcer for some company, you need to know that at some point your customer might come to you and say, dude, I need to implement accessibility because otherwise I would get a fine. So that won't be good for him. Okay, I saw a question. What percentage of users requires these exceptions? I actually can't tell you, but let's Google. I'll predict that a lot because we, as I told you in the beginning, we don't talk about we don't talk only about people with disabilities. We talk about people that are perfectly healthy, but for now have some problems with access, like broken mouse, for example. Well, kind of many. Okay, yes. I can't answer your question like directly, but like taking into account the numbers I told you before about amount of elderly people that use web now is almost 1 billion people, and as you might know, most of these people would have some disabilities, and it's already 1 billion people that we need to provide with some sort of accessibility. So it's actually a lot. So I told you, not told you, but we came across ARIA before. An ARIA is accessible rich internet applications, and it's mostly a set of attributes for HTML to make your content more accessible, and it is actually a W3C protocol for enhancing and supporting accessibility for some content, sometimes even for dynamic content. For example, imagine a website where you have like pop-up over in the like top right corner of your window. How blind person probably would know that this pop-up appeared, and this is where ARIA might help us. So why we should use ARIA, and it actually help us to structure our web page and website to enhance our accessibility. We recognize accessibility errors. We use it to fix some accessibility errors, to build some accessible JavaScript widgets, because most of the time in our project, in our websites, we create some cool custom components or widgets, and we should support them with accessibility. And this might be hard. This might be hard because by default, accessibility is provided for every um, tag in our page if we use them properly. So this is actually why we need to use HTML5 and proper tags as well, because if we use proper tag for button, not link, for example, our screen reader or some accessive technology will tell you from scratch without you doing anything that this was a button. But if we had to use some custom components and we had to create them from scratch, ARIA would help us to tell the screen reader what it actually is. Also, ARIA help us to test web pages for JavaScript-related accessibility errors and we should incorporate ARIA and JavaScript accessibility into the planning and creation of new content. So right from the beginning, when you started to thinking about some feature, you should think also about some accessibility and how ARIA attributes might help you with that. Not after, because after you created some, for example, widget or some component, it might be actually a problem to incorporate it in the already created element. So, ARIA allows us to communicate the following information to screen readers, like label or name, some rows, some states or dynamic interactive components, properties of items, relationships between some items, and some live updates, like I told you about pop-ups. So, what you need to understand that just using ARIA attributes won't give you accessibility. You need to maintain your focus by JavaScript. You need to add some JavaScript for navigation, for keyboard navigation. And if you want something, if you want, for example, just screen reader to tell the user that, hey guy, there is a pop-up appeared on the page and it tells you blah, 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 you need to change ARIA attributes by JavaScript as well. So scripts are required in accessibility as well. And let's talk about role, because it's, in my opinion, the most helpful ARIA attribute. And it helps you to tell the accessive technology what this component actually is. As I told you, if we use some HTML5 tags, we don't actually need to do that. But for example, if we created some custom radio button and we hidden our real input and, for example, showed a specially created, I don't know, label for that, we need to tell the screen reader that, hey dude, it's actually a radio button even though I didn't use proper tags. Or, hey guy, it's not a link, it's actually a button. So don't tell the user that it's a link. Please tell that it's a button and interact with it intelligently and properly. So, as I told you, when a screen reader comes to an image tag, for example, the screen reader knows what it is, that it is an image, that I need to read some alternative tags, that I need to tell the user that it is actually an image. And in most browsers, we say screen reader, like NVDA, would tell that it's graphic. If I'm not mistaken, in Internet Explorer, it would say that it's a picture, but it's not important, just that it would say that it's what it is. And this is like a table of different ARIA rows. And as you can see here, the rows mostly are the same that some tags that we can use, like form or button or some menu, image, for example. Grid row is not like the tags, but we use it in the CSS, for example. Radio for radio button, and link for some A tags. And this is like a periodic table for all area attributes. And here we can see that there is not only a row, it's now actually a row here. So for most attributes, we use like prefix area. For role, we use just like role, and that's it. So we have like area live attribute that will tell you, not you, but tell the user using some accessive technology that something has changed. So we change this area live attribute by JavaScript, and this is how screen reader, for example, would know that something changed. Or, for example, area expanded. It's useful for some selects or drop downs, and it would tell the user when it focus on this element that this element is actually expanded. Checked is for radio button, for radio button. And checkbox. Area disabled might be used for some buttons or area label or area label by. This area attribute is used to is used by screen reader, and instead of some content of your element or name or anything else, it would read from area label attribute or from element ID, which ID was set in the area label by attribute. I will show you a bit later how it's created. Read-only clear would tell that it's only read-only, only read-only. Yeah. Here is like an example of accessible piece of code. So here we can see role attributes, radio group for some UL element, and radio role for least element. So as you can see here, it's not actually an input and it doesn't have anything like label or something, but probably using some JavaScript, we created from this list item something like radio button, and to tell the screen reader that this is actually a radio button and that it should be written and it should be focusable, not just that it is radio button. We use role radio here. Role presentation would tell you that would not oh my gosh, would tell accessive technology that this element, this image now should be ignored. So this element is only for presentation. Ignore it. Don't tell the user that it's an image, that it actually exists on the page. Here also we have some area labeled by attribute, and here you can see that I put here an ID of H3 element. So when I would focus on this radio group, screen reader would read launch options from like content of this H3 element. Area checked would tell the user that this radio button is checked or not, depending on what we pass here. On this example, we used area required, and it tells the user that this input is required to fulfill. So for user who can see this, we put here a star. So this kind of mark, or probably we would add some text, like real text, or some tooltip that would tell the user like who can read, who can see the screen that this input is required for. Person with some disabilities, we would add area required, and it would tell through the screen reader that this actually is obligatory. And also tab index, it's not area attribute, but it's like accessive attribute. We use it to tell the browser that this element should be actually focusable. So if we pass there some positive value, so 0 is enough, we tell the browser that this element should be focusable. Usually, by default, we focus on some forms, for example, inputs, buttons, links, some navigation menus, and mostly that's it. But as I told you, if we create some custom element in it, and it is actually not any of the listed, we should force our browser to make it focusable. So this is where tab index help us. If we pass their negative value, it on the other hand would pass it from focusing. So this we can also use on some focusable element to make the elements to make them non-focusable. Yeah, the tab index is a global attribute, and yeah, here I described that if we pass their negative value, it means that the element shouldn't be reachable via keyboard focus. If 0 mean if we pass the 0, it means that element should be focused, and focus would use the default order, so the flow of the page. If we pass there some positive value, it like that index will rise the priority of our element, so this element would be focused first. So it's not a good practice to pass there something more than 0. Most of the times, as well as with that index in CSS, we can achieve our results just putting elements in the proper order just in HTML. We don't use, most of the time, like 90%, we don't use positive values for tab index. Okay, maybe some questions so far. Okay, I hope not. Cool, so what tools should we use in testing accessibilities, in developing some accessibility features, and etc.? So there are like mostly two groups, like screen readers. It's something that people with disabilities, or like audible or maybe visible, would use. Like for Windows, it's usually NVDA. For Mac, is VoiceOver. TalkBack is for Android. Also, VoiceOver we use on like not macOS, but for like iOS as well. Yeah, it's some screen reader shortcuts. So there are some like buttons that we can push to navigate to use something. So it would be nice to go through. It's actually links. And for DevTools, we have a variety DevTools for Google Chrome. Mostly it's like Axe or Site Improve. For Mozilla, like here is a Site Improve for Chrome, and Color Contrast Analyzer for any browser. Yeah, so maybe I didn't mention it about color contrast, but it is actually something. No, I told you about the story about sun. So yeah, contrast of the of the content of your page is actually really important, and some people, for example, with some problems in recognizing colors or just inside problems might not see your content just because there is a bad color contrast, and this might appear when you, for example, put some text over an image, or if you're for some reason used red on the black. So red and black actually has the worst contrast from like every other combinations. So consider this as well. Yeah, this is the end of our theoretical part of our presentation. Thank you for listening to it. And now we will go to some practical part, and hope I will be able to present you that, because I'm kind of already tired. Here are some useful links for you, some accessibility pattern, developer guideline, how to hide element but leave it accessible, some links from presentation, and links to laws for every country. So here also a video about how blind users see devices, really interesting to look at. So let me show you my screen fully. Yep, so when we implement some accessibility, as I told you, we might use some tools, and I will show you them right now. So I'm starting a basic, like my pet project. Okay, fine, yeah. So I told you about X. It's some tool for the Chrome. Here how it looks like. We click analyze it, and it tells us what kind of problems we have on our side, and it actually tells us how to solve this violation if we need it. Not always we can. These suggestions might help us, but like a lot, we can find which element violated the rules, and we can go through them. So yeah, let's fix some of them. So form elements must have labels. So let's look at that. We have our input elements with placeholder search don't have labels. So this is this input. Let's add it there. So this is my input, and we can see that it don't have actually a label. So let's add it. Here I add attribute HTML4. It's only for React. In core JavaScript, we would have just 4 attributes. So in 4, I should pass some ID of my input. Let's add it. Search. For example, D. And let's tell the user what it is. So it's like search some movies. So we added our labels, but in our design, we actually don't have label here. So it don't fit our design. So how can I hide this? Using display none or visibility hidden would break the accessibility itself, because for screen reader and for any accessible technology, this label would be hidden as well, and it's not what we need. We want to hide it from the view, but we want it to stay accessible. And like I added this link for this in the presentation as well, so we can just use certain techniques like making the size of the element 0 or position position it out of the screen, like drastically out of the screen. There are many techniques, but I would use the suggested one. I would add it in my global styles. And I would add this class here. Class name. Okay. Hide. So let's see, did it work? No, it's not. I wrote this wrong name. Cool, so yeah, this worked. And let's check for accessibility. Yeah, I fixed this problem with form. I added label for my for user that can see like design, the layout and everything and stay beautiful. We don't have this label, but for some accessible like checkers and for people that would go through this website with keyboard, this label will appear, that would be written, and I would show you that in a few minutes how the screen reader works. So yeah, let's go through these three problems. So page must contain a level 1 heading. So this is really important. So let's look on our page. Probably moving up is a nice place to put a H1 element, yeah. And it looks fine, it didn't broke anything, but if you, for example, created a website and there is no way for you to add visible H1 element, you actually can use the same technique as I used with this label, just hide it from the view and just add it somewhere in your page, probably in the higher level. So let's check. Did it work? Let's analyze. Yeah, this worked. The problem disappeared. So the next problem is elements must have sufficient color contrast, and this is the problem that you won't fix yourself. This problem is usually is solved by designer on your project. So you came across this problem, you make a screenshot of it, you send it to your designer, and he or she solves it and send you a new color palette or something like that. So we won't fix it now, and links with the same name have a similar purpose. So you can see this kind of flag. If I'm not mistaken, it means that it's not an error, it's a warning. So yeah, we have like impact minor. So links with the same name have a similar purpose, and we can see that element source is actually all my buttons see more. And for me now, it's not, I can't solve this because actually they solve similar purpose. They navigate to some page with details, but there is no way I can solve it. So this is just a warning. It have a minor impact, so you can leave it as it is. It won't give you any problem. So this is how X works. Let's go to site improve. It's actually already here. And you might see that it's actually a bit more useful because you can see level A2 or sometimes A3. you can like set up the filters. Then you would see like A3 and everything. So do you want to see some warning or some review? This is the point where you just need to check it, because this not every tool that you use might tell you every problem that you have. So this is how problems that require manual review highlight. So I don't want to see them now. Choose responsibility. It's not like something that you might wanna to change, because you would need to highlight this problem or solve it somehow anyway. So I won't recommend you to change something in here. So I changed my filters and I can see now I don't want to see A3. So I can see some problems. So adaptable, you can see it's like a guideline, and this is how it can be. This describes what this problem contained of. So form elements are not grouped, and it talks about this tooltips. Oh my gosh, toggle. So if you inspect this element, you would see that it's actually just two inputs, and it's radio inputs, but they don't have radio button in the upper level or anywhere in the parent. So let's edit. So where is my toggle? Toggle component. Yeah. So here I can see I have only div in the parent, no any like radio group. So let's add row radio group. And check recite improve. Form elements are not grouped yet. I don't believe you. Yeah, so we added radio group, but it's missing a name. So for radio group, we also need to add like area labeled by or area label. So let's add it. So like when we came across this with our keyboard or with screen reader, it would read for user what type of group it is or what name does it have. So let's add area. Here I can see that I have actually some text before my tooltip. So let's use it to give a name to our radio group. So area labeled by area labeled by, and here I should put an ID of element that I need to reference to. So let's call it radio group. No, let's call it group label, label, and let's add a unique type, some of uniqueness to this. So let's add some text, and we would use this as well as an ID for this element. ID. Yeah, so let's check. Is site improve happy? So yeah, we don't see this problem here. Let's go to next one. No, we have it. It has an incorrect reference ID. So the area label by attribute has reference to an ID that doesn't exist or an ID that is not unique. Okay, so we created a non-unique ID. Okay, let's use a different thing. Let's use a type. let's use a type. So as we can see here, type is used to name our input, so it probably would be unique and solid because in the text we had a space, so it kind of broke our ID. Yeah, let's check. Yeah, it's absolutely awesome, fine, cool. So we again have problem with contrast, but it's fine. We decided to not fix it for now because we don't have a designer. So link text used for multiple different destinations. So here you can see that it is talking about our CMOR, all of them. Probably to make it more clear, let's add some area label to them so user would know what would he see more. So link button, it's actually a component. So let's add some new prop like accessibility and what we would use here. Let's use some text plus some data. See more details about and the name of the film. Let's check. Did it appear? Inspect. So yeah, we added props, but we didn't put it in the link button. So here we get from props and accessibility, and we add area label. That is actually comes from props and accessibility. So let's check now. Yeah, here you can see area label, see more details about Robin Hood. Let's add a space so it would be nicer. Yeah, so see more details about Robin Hood. So I'm expecting that when I focus on this, my screen reader would read it, and we will see this in a few minutes. So as you can see, I don't have this problem anymore. So focus visible. I don't have this problem anymore. Cool. So we ended up only with contrast problem, which would be solved by some designer and new color palette. So it's fine. So now there's a question. Can you please show again how did you start to check all that things without input? What tools are you using? So where is it in fact? Oh. So this two tools that I showed you are extensions for Chrome. So it is X. You just get them from like here, like X. This is one, and yeah, so you can use it. Just install it in your Chrome browser and site improve also an extension for Chrome. So X is the first one that I showed you. It would appear in the F12 menu here, as well as like Redux or components profiler, component extensions for React. And site improve would appear in your bar with extensions. So you just click on it and it analyzes. So yeah, kind of like this. So I finished with tools. Let's go to some screen reader, and I would show you NVDA. So do you see my full screen? Yeah. So I started NVDA, and for now, as you can't hear, but it will voice over everything that is happening on the screen. So when I focus over the page, it will read everything like by using like electronic voice. If I can't hear for some reason, but I still want to use, because when you're developing, it might be annoying always hearing this voice, and usually developers just shut it down and use speech viewer. So as you can see here, it's actually even telling when I'm navigating on something only using mouse. So it can read text, it can tell this. So, but we would use it in the focus mode. So to focus over focusable elements on the page, we use tab button. So I'm now on the URL of my browser. I click once, I appear on the first focusable element on my page, and it is search input. In the NVDA speech viewer, I can see that it reads search some movies. It's my label. Edit tells that it's editable, has autocomplete. So it also tells us that this input value has autocomplete feature, and reads placeholder. Then when I will tab again, I expect appear on the search by toggle, but no, I appeared on the search button. Why did I skip this toggle? And actually, I would skip this one as well when I navigate, as you can see. So I skip my toggles, and this is a problem. That's not good. And if you inspect this component, you would see that actually inputs. Now let me close NVDA for now because it's a bit annoying. Yeah, so here you can see that my inputs has display none property. So for screen readers, they are not exist. And screen readers don't focus on labels, which are actually here custom radio, because they are for screen readers, labels are not focusable. They are just text content. So it won't focus on that. So we need to fix it somehow. And here where the role attribute would help us again. So, but first of all, as I developed, labels should be focusable. So I would make them focusable. Here I add some tab index and tell be focusable, please. Over here, let's check, did it work? Yeah, now I can focus, but I hardly see. This is probably a problem of my implementation, because when we focus, we get outline over our element. It's like separate CSS property, and sometimes our implementation might block it. So let's add globally some outline for focusable elements. So what we have focusable A, we can have button, we have input, what else? Let's add for label as well. So when any of this element is focused, I want the outline to be 3 pixels wide, solid. So you pass there the same properties as for border. So 3 pixels wide, solid, and be white. So let's check, did it appear? Yes, so no, yes, no, did it work? Yes, so as you can see, I have this outline, but for my elements, for some reason, it didn't work. So you need to be you need to know that outline is actually something around your component. So as you might already know about box model, so outline is over this box model, so it's over your border. So here probably I added some overflow. Yep. So yeah, I added overflow on the parent of my labels that should be focusable and should have outline. So this outline is actually appeared somewhere behind the overflow. So I need to remove, I need to go to toggle styles and remove this outline overflow from the body. Let's do like this and add it to the label. So here. So did it work? Yep, I fixed it. So I see where my focus is. This is also some accessibility problems that you need to solve. That my focus is always visible. Cool. I can focus everywhere I want. I can focus even here. As you can see, outline appeared here over A, but I have some styles in span and have their margin top. So to make our outline appear like in a more attractive way, let's find this link and put margin on the link itself, not in the span. Margin top. Okay. I see what was problem here. Okay, let's do wrapper. No. Yep. Content like this. Let's go to BAM using BAM content. I created a separate class. I would put everything in here. I would change it to link content, and I would add my link class to the wrapper link. Yep, so it should help, I hope. Yep, so you see we have like quite a nice outline now. So we fixed visual problems, we fixed problems with focus, we fixed problems with some tools. Let's check again our NVDA, how it will read our page. So tools, speech viewer. So let's go. Let's go from the beginning. So I'm on the URL. I appear on the search. It reads search more movies, so it's label and placeholder. Then I appear on the radio group, and it tells us that it's actually a radio group. It's searched by grouping, and that we have now a title value, and now it's gender, and now it's title and gender again. Okay, but it actually didn't say that it's a radio, so for user it's not clear that what it is. As you can see, just read search by grouping and title. What is title or what is gender? It's not clear. So let's add roles to our toggle here to label role radio. So it would tell the user what it is. Let's check how it works. As you can see now, so it tells that we are on the search bar grouping and the title is a value of radio button that is not checked. And it tells us that moreover, it's one of two. So this is where we also should implement like navigation using arrows. Here now I navigate only by tab. That is not really how it should behave, but for sake of experiments, it would be fine. Just take it into consideration that some behavior of the elements also should be implemented properly. So it tells us everything, it's fine. So next we appear on the search, it tells us that it is a button, then we again appear on the grouping. We clearly can see how many variants, is it checked or not. It's actually telling us wrong that rating is not checked, but it is. So this is where we actually should add like area checked. For now, I'm adding this hard-coded false, yeah. But it should be operated. It should be operated from JavaScript as well, so we should change it when we actually check it. Let's check on change. Probably it would be nice to have get something is checked from props and to put it here as well. So it would be something like this in the if we would implement it. So for now we don't have actually time to do this. So yeah, let's check. Let's imagine that we implemented everything. So now it's tells us that it's checked and this is also checked. Probably false. Yeah. Evening. So yeah, here it tells us now that the year is not checked and rating is checked. But unfortunately, if I select, it would say it again, this is where I told you we should manipulate it with JavaScript. Cool, then it tells us about see more, but it don't tell us the text we added there. And tell me why it doesn't. Let's find out why it doesn't read our text. Probably I wrote label, area label. No, area label. Okay. Yeah, I put it in the wrong place. Should be here. Oh my gosh, yeah. So yeah, so now you can see that it reads our area label. So it reads like see more details about Dark Phoenix, or see more details about the Lion King, and it actually tells us that we already visited this link and that it's actually a link. So as you can see, we have some problems with outline again. It will be solved, but not now. So mostly we made our small web page accessible. It's kind of reads the text that we wanted to read. So person with the problems might navigate through our page fully and without any problems. So I guess that's it from me. Maybe you have some questions. Cool. So yeah, don't forget about accessibility. In this course, you don't have home task or anything to practice it, but in my experience, and as you already heard here, it's really, really important things. And usually customers from countries that cover accessibility in law would be really, really concerned about it. So you would need to take it into account, implementing something. So don't forget it. And yeah, thank you everyone for listening to me and this boring lecture. Thank you for joining. Bye.